The great galactic council gathered inside the shining hall of Virus Prime. Hundreds of alien species filled the chamber, their voices echoing through marble and light. They spoke of order, of peace, and of one small problem. Humanity. To them, Earth was nothing more than a stubborn world that refused to kneel, primitive, reckless, emotional. That was how the council described the humans. They laughed when reports came in of Earth's destroyed colonies and fallen fleets to the great empires. Humanity was finished, broken beyond repair. No one in that hall imagined what was truly waiting in the dark. The Threx Dominion's ambassador, a tall creature with silver scale, stood and grinned. Humans are loud but weak, he said, his voice filled with arrogance. They talk of courage but run from war. Their spirit burns fast and fades faster. Laughter filled the chamber, rolling like thunder. The elder of the Varn Empire waved his hand and added, "Let them cry to their dying son. We have crushed them enough, every race." There believed that humanity's story had ended, but far away in silence humanity was only turning the page. Deep beneath the dust of Mars, in tunnels older than memory, machines hummed. Old engineers, scarred from past wars, worked without rest. Project Ares had been hidden for decades, a secret built from pain and loss. When Earth fell under alien bombardment, the last order from the Terran High Command had been clear: go dark, rebuild, and wait. And so they waited year after year while the galaxy forgot they existed. Now, for the first time in generations, the silence broke. Red lights flickered across the underground hangars as power returned to forgotten machines. Engines once buried in sand began to roar again, and on every monitor one message appeared: the time has come. Back in the council, an envoy from the Leather Collective frowned. He had intercepted strange signals from the Sol system, but when he tried to warn the others, they ignored him. Humans, the Threx ambassador sneered, "They can barely build a cruiser now." The room erupted with laughter once again. The arrogance in that hall was thicker than the air. They breathed. None of them had ever seen a human's determination up close. None of them had ever watched a human fight with everything they had. They would learn soon enough on Earth. The surviving commanders stood before the holographic image of the galaxy. Old stars, old enemies, old wounds. Shining before them, the commander of Project Ares, Admiral Keon Hayes, placed his hand on the table. His voice was calm but cold. "They think we are gone," he said. "They think humanity bows." A dozen officers stood silent, their faces hard, their eyes tired, but deep in their hearts burned something the council had forgotten: hope. Hayes turned to his second officer. "Captain Lynn Aurora, is the fleet ready?" he asked. Her voice trembled slightly but carried strength. "Almost, sir. The vengeance is awake." Hayes nodded slowly, then whispered the words that would echo through history. "Then we wake the rest." At that same hour, across the outer colonies, quiet transmissions pulsed through space. Every forgotten outpost, every deep space station once abandoned by humans, came alive. Old drones reactivated. Shipyards powered on. Reactors hummed. Again, after decades of dust, humanity was gathering its strength, not in anger alone, but in memory. They remembered. The cities turned to glass, the voices lost in static, the promises broken, and they swore it would never happen again. Meanwhile, the council celebrated their so-called Victory Day. Fireworks exploded above Ars Prime, alien. Leaders toasted to peace, pride shining in their eyes, but peace built on. Arrogance is a fragile thing, and somewhere beyond the edge of their sensors, an invisible human ship drifted. Quietly, the HSS Vengeance, humanity's first dreadnought, long thought. Destroyed, now fully repaired, its hull black as night, its engines burning with silent fury. Inside the command deck, Admiral Hayes stood, staring into the stars. Let them celebrate, he murmured. They'll never see it coming. The ship's AI, Athena, spoke softly, her tone almost human. Targets uploaded. Admiral, awaiting your order. Hayes looked at the names glowing on the screen. Worlds that had bombed Earth. Fleets that had massacred civilians. He took a slow breath. Not yet, he said. We strike when they stop watching, and as the Vengeance moved through the dark, invisible to every alien sensor, the stars seemed to hold their breath. Something unstoppable had begun to move. A storm made of human will, human rage, and human unity. Back in the council chamber, the leather envoy checked his scanner once more. There it was again, a strange, faint energy spike near the outer rim. He tried to speak, but no one listened. The council had already moved to the next agenda: trade routes, taxes, petty rivalries. No one cared about the humans anymore. They had already written humanity's ending, but they were wrong. For in the cold of space, the true story of mankind was just beginning, far from any mapped star, deep in the cold silence of the asteroid belts. Humanity's heartbeat began to echo again in those forgotten fields of rock and shadow. Enormous shipyards floated unseen. They had been abandoned decades ago, left to drift when Earth fell, but hidden beneath layers of camouflage and debris. They had never truly been silent. For years, the engineers of Project Ares had lived in darkness, keeping the secret alive. They rebuilt what was lost, piece by piece, metal by metal, dream by dream. And now, after generations of waiting, the silence broke. Rows upon rows of colossal warships awakened under red emergency lights. Each vessel was coated in black armor that absorbed all light. A ghost fleet born from human fury. Engines hummed to life, shaking the very asteroids around them. Tiny figures moved along the hulls in vacuum suits, checking weapons, calibrating systems. One ship stood at the center, HSS Vengeance, the dreadnought that led them all. Her hull bore scars from the first galactic war, her guns older than some stars, but within her steel heart beat the newest of Terran technology. Cold, perfect and deadly, Admiral Hayes walked along the observation deck, staring through the glass at the growing fleet. He had waited his entire life for this moment. Behind him, Captain Aurora read out the activation reports. Fleet 1 through 4 online, sir. Battle groups are fueled and armed. And GT AI command protocol stable. Hayes nodded. Without a word, his eyes fixed on the massive screen showing thousands of ships aligning. He could almost hear the ghosts of those who had fallen whispering through the engine's hum. We're back, he murmured, his voice barely audible, but the words carried power. In the farthest corner of the galaxy, alien patrols began to report strange disappearances. Mining convoys went silent. Research stations stopped transmitting. A few faint emergency signals reached the Dominion border. They spoke of shadows moving between the stars, of enormous shapes that appeared and vanished without warning. But when Those reports reached the Galactic Council. They laughed. Pirates, said one. Ambassador, or perhaps ghosts, no one believed that humans had the strength left to build anything more than a transport ship. Their arrogance blinded them, just as humanity had hoped. Back within the hidden shipyards, the final phase of awakening began. The humans had built something new, ghost drives, experimental engines that could distort light and radar. Each warship could vanish from sensors, becoming a silent predator in the dark. The technology was unstable, dangerous even, but humanity had learned to live with danger. They didn't need perfection, they needed power, and power was something they had in abundance. Commander Ren Ishida, chief engineer of the HSS Vengeance, watched the readouts with tired eyes. We were supposed to make explorers, he said quietly, not weapons. Captain Aurora looked at him, her expression calm but fierce. We tried peace, Commander. They burned it, she replied. The words hit hard, yet they were true. Every man and woman aboard those ships had lost something, family, home, or hope. Now they had only one mission left, to make sure humanity was never mocked again. As the fleet powered up, the shipyard trembled under the combined force of thousands of engines. Dust and rock drifted away into space, revealing the full scale of the armada. It stretched for miles, a sea of black steel and blue thrusters glowing faintly in the void. Each ship bore the same insignia: Silver Phoenix rising from fire, symbol of Earth reborn. Admiral Hayes stood before the command table. Begin. Link up, he ordered instantly. Fleet's AI synchronized, creating a single shared network. Every captain could feel the pulse of the fleet, the unity that had been lost for a century. It was more than ships, it was humanity's will made real. At that very moment, somewhere near the rim, an alien recon vessel detected a distortion in space. The sensors blinked and stuttered as they tried to read the anomaly. Then, without warning, an enormous shadow eclipsed their ship. The crew stared in shock as light spread across the dark surface of something colossal. It was not an asteroid nor a fleet. It was one ship, a massive dreadnought moving without sound. Before the aliens could even send a warning, their screens filled with static. A human voice came through their radio, calm and sharp. This is Terran. Command, your time is over. And then nothing but silence. Back at the Galactic Council, the leather envoy once again tried to speak. He showed them the intercepted static bursts, the faint traces of human communication codes. Other ambassadors rolled their eyes. Do you see any human fleets? Any colonies? No, one of them hissed. They are ghosts of the past. But the envoy's claws trembled as he played the final piece of the recording, a single human voice repeating the same words again and again. For Earth. The council went quiet for a moment, then, as always, dismissed it. None of them realized that humanity's ghost fleet was already moving toward their borders. Admiral Hayes stood before the giant holographic star map. Lines of red marked the routes of the enemy empires. He pointed at the largest one, the Threx Dominion. They led the attack on Earth. He said coldly, they'll be the first to fall. Captain Aurora nodded. And the others? Hayes's eyes burned with purpose. They'll follow soon enough. He turned toward the window, watching as hundreds of human warships formed into perfect battle lines. The stars beyond them seemed to tremble, as if the Universe itself understood what was coming. The humans had hidden for a century, but now they were ready to strike. The void was quiet, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. Humanity's fleet drifted among the stars, like shadows, unseen, unheard, unstoppable. Every ship in the hidden armada waited for one signal, one word from Admiral Hayes. The crew held their breath, their eyes fixed on the displays showing their first targets, the Threx dominions, frontier bases, proud symbols of alien superiority, glowed on the map like red scars. Those bases had been built on the ashes of human colonies, on the ruins of cities once filled with laughter. Now they would burn. Status report, Hayes said calmly, his voice echoing through the bridge of the HSS Vengeance fleet. Standing by, sir, Captain Aurora replied, her hand steady though her heart raced. Ghost drive stable, weapons online, all ships report green. Admiral nodded slowly. He looked at the tactical map and then at the small blue icon that marked Earth's position far away. It was barely visible among the stars, but it was the reason they were here. Hayes raised his hand, his expression unreadable. Execute operation Dawnfire, he said, the order that humanity had waited a century to hear. Across the black sea of space, thousands of engines ignited as one. The human armada surged forward, silent and invisible. Every ship moved through space with precision, guided by AI and human instinct combined. The aliens had no warning, no defense, no idea that death was coming. At the Threx outpost, Sigma 4, alien workers laughed as they loaded cargo ships, their communications filled with idle chatter, talk of trade, talk of power. Then, without warning, the stars disappeared. The humans had arrived. The first volley came from orbit. Massive tungsten rods dropped at relativistic speeds. No lasers, no flashy weapons, just pure physics and vengeance. In seconds, the outpost was gone, reduced to glowing fragments, drifting in the void. Before anyone could react, the next target went dark, and then another and another. Entire sectors vanished from the Dominion's communications grid. The Galactic Council received confused distress calls, reports of invisible attackers, weapons they couldn't detect. Every message ended the same way, with a human voice whispering for Earth. Inside the council chamber, panic spread. For the first time in centuries, the ambassadors shouted over one another, demanding answers. No known power has that kind of stealth, one yelled. It must be the Shadow Syndicate, cried another, but the leather envoy, the one who had warned them, stood silent. He recognized the voice on the transmission, the tone, the defiance. It's them, he said softly. It's the humans. The others froze, their faces pale with disbelief. No, hissed the Three's representative. They are extinct. The envoy only whispered, then tell me who else speaks. For Earth, back in the war zone, the human fleet moved with cold precision. Each strike crippled the enemy without mercy. Human pilots flew through debris fields, their faces emotionless, their eyes burning with focus. One pilot, Lieutenant Mara, flew her fighter through a cloud of wreckage, her voice calm as she locked onto another target. For New Geneva, she said quietly before pressing the trigger. Her missile streaked forward and silenced the alien cruiser in a burst of light. One by one, humanity's ghosts erased the marks of their pain from the stars. Admiral Hayes watched it all from the command deck, his expression heavy. Each destroyed Base brought satisfaction, but also sorrow. He wasn't fighting for revenge alone, he was fighting for survival, for the right to exist without chains. He knew what would come next, the galaxy's retaliation, and he welcomed it. Send the message, he ordered. Captain Aurora turned, her voice steady. Which message, sir? Hayes looked toward the camera, his eyes hard as steel. The truth, he said. Moments later, every surviving comm station received the same transmission. The image of the human fleet appeared across hundreds of systems. Behind the Admiral, the insignia of Earth glowed like fire. This is Admiral Keon Hayes of the Terran Federation, he said. Your empires destroyed our world, but humanity endures. We do not forgive. We do not forget. This is our answer. The feed cut out in silence followed across the galaxy. Fear spread like wildfire. The mighty Threx Dominion, once proud and cruel, began to retreat from its border colonies. The Council scrambled to understand what kind of fleet the humans had built, but it was already too late. The first retaliation had begun, and it would not stop until every arrogant empire knew what Earth's silence had meant. As the HSS Vengeance led the fleet deeper into enemy space, Captain Aurora turned to Hayes. Do you think they'll come for us now? Hayes smiled faintly. They'll have no choice, he said. Let them come. They wanted a war. Now they'll learn what humanity truly is. Outside the viewport, the wreckage of alien ships drifted silently through the dark, the stars reflected in the steel of the human fleet. And in that endless black sky, one truth was clear. The galaxy had awakened something it could never control. Humanity had struck back, and the stars themselves trembled. The galaxy had never known fear until humanity returned. The Threx's dominion, once the strongest empire in the known stars, now burned across every border. World after world went silent. Fleets vanished without a trace. Their proud admirals and arrogant governors now whispered one name with terror: Earth. The Galactic Council met again, but this time the hall of Valeris Prime was filled not with laughter but with dread. Gone were the speeches of pride. Gone were the jokes about primitive humans. Now they spoke only in panic. The Terran are slaughtering our fleets. One voice cried, they strike without warning, without detection. Our sensors see nothing. The leather envoy stared into the holographic map glowing red with destroyed systems. I warned you, he said coldly. I told you they were not finished. The Threx ambassador slammed his claws on the table, his scales dull with exhaustion. They were supposed to be extinct, he shouted, and yet here we are. The envoy replied, watching ghosts tear down empires. The council fell into silence, every member realizing too late what their arrogance had done. Meanwhile, the HSS Vengeance drifted above the ruined capital of the Dominion. Below, the planet burned. Slow motion, cities crumbling under orbital strikes. Human ships hung in formation like silent predators, their hulls glowing blue against the red storm. Below, Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. He had seen the reports, enemy surrenders, distress signals, endless cries for peace, but his face showed no triumph, only grim resolve. Captain Aurora approached quietly. There, asking for terms, sir. Hayes turned toward her, his eyes hard. Terms, he said. Did they offer terms when they burned Earth? Aurora said nothing. The silence was her answer. Hayes gave a short nod. Then we answer in kind. Fleet fired once more. Tungsten rods Raining from the heavens, each impact shattered the arrogance of 1,000 years. Every empire that had mocked humanity now watched their allies crumble. Broadcasts filled the galactic networks, images of human dreadnoughts cutting through fleets 10 times their size. No super weapon, no alien technology could stop them. The humans didn't fight for conquest, they fought with conviction, and conviction was something no empire could understand. Far away on Valeris Prime, chaos ruled. The council ordered emergency evacuations, moving their leaders to hidden moons. For the first time in galactic history, the empires united. But not against each other, they united. Out of fear, they gathered fleets from 100 worlds, a combined armada larger than any ever seen. They called it Operation Cleansing Light, their goal to erase the human fleet once and for all. But when they deployed, the stars betrayed them because humanity was already waiting. Admiral Hayes watched the incoming enemy fleet appear on sensors, thousands of ships glowing like a wall of light across space. Captain Aurora whispered, "That's their entire armada." Hayes simply said, "Good, saves us the trouble of hunting them one by one." Every ship in the human fleet prepared for the battle that would decide the galaxy's future. "Activate Ares Protocol," Hayes ordered. Across the fleet, reactors flared, weapons hummed, and AI cores linked together. The stars around them bent as ghost drives engaged. The human armada vanished from all alien sensors, leaving the enemy blind in their own sky. Moments later, the first explosions ripped through the alien ranks. Invisible ships tore through formations, striking faster than thought. Alien captains screamed into their comms, "We can't see them, we can't target them." Then a human voice echoed across every open frequency, "You called us weak, now learn what strength truly means." That single transmission froze every heart in the galaxy. The human fleet emerged from the distortion fields, their weapons glowing like suns. The dreadnoughts fired as one storm of blue light filling the void. The combined armada broke within minutes, ships scattering in terror. It wasn't a battle, it was judgment. When it was over, debris filled the stars. The once proud fleet of the council lay shattered, its remains drifting toward forgotten worlds. Admiral Hayes stood in silence, his eyes reflecting the glow of burning ships. He could hear the voice of his crew behind him, cheers, sobs, disbelief, but he felt only sorrow. "Signal the survivors," he said softly. Captain Aurora looked at him confused. "Sir, tell them the war is over," Hayes replied. Aurora frowned. "Just like that?" Hayes nodded. "We've made our point." He paused, looking at the stars beyond the window. They wanted to see what humans could do. Now they've seen across the galaxy. Messages of surrender flooded in. Empires once too proud to even speak to humans now begged for mercy. Planets turned off their defenses, their leaders kneeling before holograms of Terran officers. The Galactic Council sent one final plea to Admiral Hayes, a desperate transmission broadcast on every channel. "Stop, what do you want?" The answer came seconds later, cold and simple: justice. The message echoed across every star system. It was not a threat, it was a truth. The fall of arrogance was complete. The galaxy now understood that humanity's silence had never meant weakness, it had meant patience, and when patience ended, the stars themselves trembled. The war was over. The stars that once burned with battle now shimmered in uneasy silence. Across the galaxy, the smoke of fallen empires drifted through the void. Worlds that once laughed at humanity now stood in ruins, their banners torn, their fleets broken, but amid the silence something new began to rise. Hope on the bridge of the HSS Vengeance, Admiral Hayes watched the aftermath unfold across the holographic display. Thousands of transmissions poured in, surrenders, apologies, pleased for forgiveness. He said nothing, only stared quietly. His reflection in the glass showed a tired man, not a conqueror but a survivor. Captain Aurora approached, her voice soft. It's done, sir. The galaxy is ours. Hayes shook his head slowly. No, Captain, he said, the galaxy was never ours. It just forgot what we were. Outside, human ships glided through the wreckage, helping stranded alien survivors where once there had been only vengeance. Now there was mercy. The medbays of Terran vessels open to all species. Doctors treated enemies without hesitation. Soldiers who had lost everything now offered food and water to those who had once burned their worlds. For humanity had fought not to destroy, but to remind the galaxy of who they were and what they could become on Veers Prime. The once glorious hall of the Galactic Council now lay in ruin. The marble pillars were shattered, and the golden banners of the great empires hung in tatters, and there upon the cracked floor the remaining counselors waited trembling when the holographic form of Admiral Hayes appeared before them. No one spoke, even the arrogant Threx ambassador bowed his head. Hayes looked upon them with calm eyes, not hatred, not anger, but deep weariness. You called us savages, he said, his voice echoing through the broken chamber. You called us violent, emotional, reckless. He paused, letting the silence fill the space, but it was your arrogance that burned worlds, not our anger. The counselors lowered their gaze, unable to meet his eyes. Hayes continued, his tone steady. Humanity will not rule the stars. We will not build an empire, but we will be remembered. And with that the transmission faded, leaving the council in stunned silence. Years passed, and the scars of war slowly began to heal. Humanity rebuilt its colonies, restored Earth's blue oceans and green forests. Children played again under the same sun that once burned with fire. The name Terran became a symbol not of terror, but of resilience. Other species began to rebuild too, guided by what humanity had shown them, strength through unity, not domination. Trade routes reopened. Alliances were formed, and slowly peace returned. The HSS Vengeance was decommissioned and turned into a memorial station orbiting Mars, its halls filled with the names of every soul lost during the Great Retaliation. Visitors from across the stars came to see it. Some came to pay respect, others to understand the legend. They would walk through silent corridors, reading the etched words at the entrance. We were not born from power, we were born from struggle, and beneath it smaller letters read, never mistake silence for weakness. Admiral Hayes retired quietly to a small home overlooking the red plains of Mars. He would often stand outside watching the sun dip below the horizon. Captain Aurora visited him one final time years later. The galaxy has changed, she said, so of humanity. Hayes smiled faintly. No, he replied, we just reminded them what light looked like. The two of them stood in silence. Colony ship launched toward the unknown stars. Its engines flared, a symbol of hope reborn across the galaxy. Songs were written, a tale of the species that vanished only to return when the universe had forgotten it. In fear, awe, and respect, they spoke of the day the our silence ended and humanity struck back, and as those words spread, remained, the galaxy would never again underestimate the children of Earth, because when humanity rose, the stars themselves learned to bow.